Hi there. Today we're going to change topics and go into talking about international sports. Now, when you think about international sports, there's probably one thing that comes to mind before all other sports or sporting events, and that would be the Olympics. So, today we're going to take a look at the Olympics, but first we're going to watch a short video explaining them to you.
Every few years, thousands of the finest athletes in the world gather together to compete in the Olympic Games. They come from hundreds of countries, from all parts of the globe, and for the length of the Games, the world comes together on common ground in a celebration of peace and unity. But what are the Olympics? The first Olympic Games took place in Greece nearly 3,000 years ago in 776 BC. They were athletic competitions held in honor of Zeus, the king of the gods. The games happened every 4 years, and during the games there was an Olympic truce when wars and battles were not allowed so that the athletes from different cities could travel safely to and from the games. Originally, the Olympic Games only had one event, a short race across a stadium. But through the years, more events were added, including boxing, wrestling, long jump, throwing javelins and discus, and chariot racing. In the ancient Olympics, only men were allowed to compete. The winners were awarded a wreath or crown of olive branches, which was a great honor, and often received money and other prizes. The final games of the ancient Olympics were held in 393 AD, ending a tradition of over 1,000 years. It wasn't until almost 1,500 years later that someone tried to hold the Olympics again. Small events modeled after the ancient Olympics were held in various places in Europe off and on for over 100 years, until the International Olympic Committee was created in 1894 by Baron Pierre de Coubertin of France. The first games organized by the IOC took place in Athens, Greece in 1896 and featured 241 athletes from 14 countries. Since that small beginning, many things have changed. Women first competed in the Olympics in 1900. The Olympics were expanded to include winter sports like skiing and figure skating, and special Winter Olympics were held to make that possible. Parallel Olympics, now known as the Paralympics, began to be held for athletes with disabilities. Not so long ago, youth games were introduced, which allows athletes between the age of 14 and 18 to compete. Today, the Olympic Games are held every 2 years, with Summer Olympics and Winter Olympics alternating, so that there are 4 years between each Summer Olympic Games and 4 years between each Winter Olympic Games. These are only some of the differences between the ancient Olympics and the modern Olympic Games. While the ancient Olympics were held in the same place each time, the modern Olympics are held in different cities around the world. In the ancient Olympics, winners were awarded olive branches, but in the modern Olympics, the victors receive medals. Third place wins bronze, second place wins silver, and first place gets a gold medal. The gold medals are not actually made of solid gold, however. They are made of silver covered with a thin layer of gold. Another important symbol of the Olympics is the Olympic rings. 5 interlocking rings of blue, yellow, black, green, and red on a white background. The colors of the rings were chosen because every flag in the world at the time had at least one of those colors on it. Each of the 5 rings represents one of the inhabited continents of the world. North and South America are counted as one, along with Africa, Asia, Europe, and Australia. After the rings, one of the most important symbols of the Olympics is the Olympic flame, or torch. The lighting of the torch is a reminder of the ancient Greek myth when Prometheus stole fire from the god Zeus to give it to humans. Before each Olympics, the torch is lit in a special ceremony at the site of the ancient Olympics in Olympia, Greece. It travels around Greece and then begins a special journey to the city that will host the Olympics. During the opening ceremonies of the Games, the torch is used to light a huge cauldron, which stays burning until the Olympics' last day. When the flame is put out, it means the official end of the Games. The goal of the Olympics is to help build a better, more peaceful world through international cooperation, friendship, and the love of the Games. The most important thing in the Olympic Games is not to win, but to take part, just as the most important thing in life is not the triumph, but the struggle. The essential thing is not to have conquered, but to have fought well. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Olympics today. Goodbye till next time.
All right, so that is a little history of the Olympics, and now we're going to go into talking about pretty much what you just saw. So we start with the ancient Olympic Games. So ancient meaning old. These were the Olympic Games from a long time ago. How long ago? Started in 776 BC, and they went to 393 AD. So if you do some quick math, you'll see that's about, or is, 1,169 years. So quite a long time they were holding the ancient Olympic Games. As you saw, the first events were running, boxing, wrestling, javelin throw, and the discus throw. Now, all of these you've probably heard about, or you might have heard about, because they are what are still in the Olympic Games. Running, as she said, changed into long jump and other athletic events that today we simply call athletics. One event, though, that they used to do in the ancient games, which we don't do anymore, is chariot racing. Right, so racing horses around a circle is no longer something we do. Now, as far as the ancient Olympic Games, they were held in Olympia, Greece. Here is the country Greece. There you know Italy. Here is Fire Chicken, and the country of Greece. So initially, those first 1,200 years, we'll say, were all in Olympia. Oftentimes when you watch the Olympics, they mention the term Olympiad. This is the blah, 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 Olympiad. Olympiad means a time of 4 years. And now every Olympics are 4 years apart. So the Summer Games were held in Beijing in 2008, 4 years later in London in 2012, then in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil in 2016, and they're supposed to be last year, 2020, in Tokyo. But as we know, COVID-19, pandemic, so hopefully they are going to be held this year, 2021, in Tokyo. The Winter Games used to be the same year as the Summer Games. The last time that happened, though, was 1992. In 1994, 2 years later, they held the Winter Games again. And then from that point on, it's been every 4 years. So that way, in 1 year, you don't have both the summer and the winter games. They are separated, more spread out. So every 2 years, there are the Olympics, just not the same ones. Winter every 4 years, summer every 4 years. Now, back in the ancient games, the winners received a crown of olive branches, which, as you see here, is a little wreath to put on their head. Now, sometimes they received another prize or some kind of gift, but everyone did receive an olive branch crown to wear on their head. Now, if we fast forward many years later, we go to what we call the modern Olympic Games, or the games that we have today. The first one of those was in 1896 in Athens, Greece. So if we look again at the map, Olympia is where they used to be. Then they switched to Athens in 1896. One difference, though, is before they were always held in Olympia. Now they change. In the year 2000, Athens did again hold or host the Olympics, Summer Olympics, but is not there every year. In that first modern games in 1896, there were 241 athletes from only 14 countries. And if you look at the events and the athletes, many of those athletes came from Greece. If you watch the Olympics today, most of the athletes are not from Greece. There were 9 sports. They had 10 events in those 9 sports. And winners received gold, silver, or bronze medals, which is what we still receive for winning first, second, or third. In Athens in the year 2000, they also did receive an olive branch crown, but that is something special to those games. It is not something you see every year. Women did not compete in the ancient Olympic Games. It was only for men. And if you think back to the pictures of what you saw the men wearing, it was very little clothing. And that is because in the ancient games, they usually didn't wear any clothes. They wanted to be free, to be able to run and move freely, and they thought clothes would keep them tight. So they would wear basically nothing. Today, they're wearing some kind of sporting uniform or clothing. So women did not compete in the first modern games in 1896, but they did compete in the next one in the year 1900. In the first Olympic Games, there was athletics, also known as track and field. As you can see in the picture, what you run around is the track. Inside where the grass is the field. So they have all those events where you have still long jump, triple jump, javelin throw, discus throw, shot put, the different running races, the relay races where it's 4 people to a team. Cycling. Road cycling, I'm sure many of you know just from taking out the U-bike, but track cycling is on an oval or like a circle going around and around on banked walls. So that is track cycling. There is also fencing, which we still have today, gymnastics, shooting, swimming, tennis, weightlifting, which some of you may know her, as she was a recent Olympic athlete for Taipei, Kuo Xing-chun, so you may know who she is, and wrestling. So those were the first games. Again, cycling had 2 different events, but those were the 9 sports. Now, the Olympic flag. She talked about the Olympic flag. That was not in the first modern games. Actually, we did not see the Olympic flag until the 1914 Olympic Games. It was designed in 1912 to 1913, and was introduced first at the 1914 Olympic Games. There are 5 rings for the 5 continents where people live. Now, as we've talked about before, we know there are 7 continents in the world. Now, this says 5 where people live. If you think about the 7 continents, there's Asia, Africa, Europe, Australia, North America, South America, and Antarctica. Now, obviously, people don't live in Antarctica. There are penguins there, and there are some scientists who stay there for periods of time, but they don't fully live there. So that leaves 6 continents where people live. So why only 5? Well, what they did was they combined North America and South America as to just America. So that's why when you talk about people from the USA and you say, oh, I'm from America, well, that could be Brazil, could be Canada, right? So America is North and South America. There are 5 colors. Back in 1914, if you looked at the flag from every country, you would see at least one of those colors in their flag. So that's why they chose those 5 colors as well as the white background. If you think about Taiwan, Taiwan flag has both red and blue. You think about Japan flag, red and white. USA flag is red, white, and blue. China, red and yellow. So all these colors are covered, or all the countries are covered in those 5 colors. So it's all encompassing as an international event. The Olympic torch and flame we talked about as far as being symbols of the Olympics. So every year, or every 4 years, there's a torch relay, basically taking this flame from Olympia in Greece and going to the host city, or where the Olympics are going to be held. It has become a recent tradition that the current Olympic Games, where they are back in 2016 was Brazil, would pass the light on to the next games, which is 2020 Japan. So this picture shows passing the torch from the 2016 games to the 2020 games. So that's more for just symbolism and to see. Also, it's usually moved by foot. So you'll see people literally running and carrying a torch and passing the light on to somebody else after running for a certain distance. That distance is not always the same. Obviously, when it goes to the end of land, it will get onto a boat or a plane and go somewhere else. The flame, the Olympic flame, is lit to start the Olympic Games. So it's usually a 2-week event. So this opening ceremony, they will light the flame, and that will stay lit for the entire duration, or the whole time of the games. At the closing ceremony is when they turn off or put out that flame, and it stays off until 4 years later when they light it again at the next game. All right, so those are the different concepts about the Olympics. Here is all of the vocabulary that you might have seen. So we have ancient, boxing, running, wrestling, javelin, discus, chariot for chariot racing, Olympia, olive, Athens, cycling, fencing, gymnastics, shooting, weightlifting, torch, flame, gold, silver, and bronze. So now, after watching the video and seeing this presentation, there is a quiz to complete. Also, if you want to go through the PowerPoint at a slower speed, that's okay. That is also on the site for you to choose. So hopefully you can answer the questions in the forms on the quiz. Not too much difficulty. It should be okay for you. Also remember to include both your English, Chinese name, and your number when you submit your score, so we know who you are and can give you credit. All right, hope you enjoyed, and good luck.